Welcome to the Liberty Mindset. Come and explore some of the ideas and issues facing our liberty. 2022 is an election year. As libertarians, we ask that you consider voting in the Liberty Mindset. Welcome, and thank you for your time. Hey everybody, welcome one and all. I'm going to be doing a reading of the introduction to the Red Pill Revolution, which we're going to be interviewing the author next week at 1 p.m. It's going to be live on YouTube. You can go to the Liberty Mindset on YouTube. You go to youtube.com/Liberty Mindset, catch us live, subscribe to our channel. You'll be able to find when the live broadcast starts. Not 100% sure we're going to try call-in. I've had some challenges with that, technologically speaking, and between using a Zoom interview, I'm not sure that I want to include call-in. We've had echo problems and things with that. But today, we're going to be looking at the Red Pill Revolution, and this is the introductory, Chapter 1, the introduction. I decided I wanted to read it so everybody had a chance to see what we're going to be looking at. What if you discovered a world that had been born into had been precisely designed in order to keep you unhappy, stressed, and struggling, all for the benefit of a tiny minority of others? Have you noticed that you can never quite seem to get there? The promise of comfort, security, and peace is always just around the corner. Government you can trust, corporations that play fair, clean food, healthcare, being cared for in your old age. A world that feels like it's getting better for each generation. It's never here, but it's always just around the corner. Happiness is always just around the next corner, isn't it? Is this the way, in your heart, that human beings are meant to live? If your answer is no, we wrote this book for you. The first goal of the Red Pill Revolution is to invite you to a fresh look at the world you live in and to question how well that world works for you. The authors will offer some alternate viewpoints for you to consider and a range of practical steps that you may choose to take that could radically transform your experience of life. This is absolutely not our intent to tell you. It is absolutely not our intent to tell you what to think. Quite the opposite, in fact. You've been told what to think your whole life. Your intention is to help you break out of that conditioning so that you can make free choices as a powerful, responsible, sovereign human being. We simply and humbly wish to offer some ideas which may be new to you. If it feels right to you, try these ideas on for size. If they work for you, keep them. If they do not work for you, discard them. Either way, as long as you're making clear choices in your own best interests, we believe this book will have succeeded in its purpose. We intend this book to be inspiring and uplifting. Yes, the picture we initially paint of the experience of the modern life may seem bleak and depressing. We do not apologize for that. But it is our hope that as a consequence, the alternative vision we offer will appear equally positive and hopeful. It also aims to be a practical guide helping you make truly free choices that will lead to tangible improvements in your everyday experience. For that reason, we will avoid straying too far into speculation about who really runs the world or what their motives might be. What we ultimately care about is the freedom and happiness of you, the reader. We should offer a warning at this point. If you proceed to read the Red Pill Revolution, you may discover things that are uncomfortable and challenging, things that you may not be able to unlearn. Now comes our first choice. If your present experience of life is perfectly rewarding and leaves you deeply satisfied, there is little point in reading on. We suggest you stop now and pass the book on to someone else. However, you may be one of those who experience a sense of wrongness, a deep conviction that somehow life ought to be better than this. If that is the case, you are in the right place. Read on. The Great Illusion. It has to be said that for many people, this is indeed the time in history which the most potential for fulfillment and happiness. We have the ability to travel almost anywhere. We have access to more enriching experiences than ever before. We have the most incredible technology. It is quite feasible today to live a higher quality of life than even kings and queens enjoyed just a few generations ago. So with all this progress, why are we not all permanently happy and fulfilled? Why are we working harder than previous generations? Why do we keep getting sicker than previous generations? Why are there epidemics of obesity, ADHD, and autism? Why is there so much poverty even in the richest countries? In a world where just 8 men have as much wealth as the poorest 50% of the human population, the super rich would eradicate all these problems with the stroke of a pen. Clearly did not believe it would be in their interest to do so. Why? There is a common answer, and it must be that it is all deliberate. Think about that for a minute. United, we could transform the world and everyone's experience for daily life. The fact that we do not can only mean one thing. We are not united. In today's world, there is clearly an us and a them. It is a big club, and you're not in it. George Carlin. You do not have to delve deep to see the truth for this for yourself. You only need to step backward for a moment. You need to step back for a moment to notice that, despite incredible sophistication, our health is actually declining. People aren't dying unnecessarily. Hatred and conflict never end, and our living environment is being polluted. We have the power to turn all these things around, yet we don't. Why? The only reason must be because it is not in the interest of the people who really run things to do so. Consider that the world you live in may not be set up to work in your best interest, but rather only to benefit a tiny minority of very rich, very powerful people. In fact, we will show every area of daily modern life, for all its promise of luxury and opportunity, has in reality been carefully arranged to keep you in a situation similar to slavery, working for the benefit of others from the day you are born to the day you die. Of course, that's not how life appears. If it did, surely there would be an outcry. Everyone would rebel, and that would ruin things for the slave owners. Instead, we all grow up believing that while today may be a struggle, life is always full of possibility. We can be anything we want to be. Success is there for the taking. And when we achieve it, the stress and struggle will be gone, and we will finally be happy. But that is all an illusion. The reality is that you're not meant to be happy and fulfilled. You're meant to live in a state of near constant stress, unable to take care of yourself, and constantly depend on others to supply even the most basic needs. In the chapters that follow, we will explain why you are depressed by design. We'll show how the illusion works, and we'll also explore the ways that you can simply step away and live a life that is true to the real you. First, you must look at how our present situation came to pass, so that we can better understand why things are the way they are. How we came to be owned. For the vast majority of our history, all humans were free folk. We built our own homes, made our own clothes, hunted our own food, foraged, raised our children, cooked, brewed, ate and drank, caught and learned, sang songs, told stories, and were basically healthy and happy. We walked free upon the earth. Also, until just a few thousand years ago, no human being was wealthy, and everyone had pretty much everything we needed: food, water, shelter, clothes, tools, weapons, medicines, ceremony or decorative items. Let that sink in. Long before the modern age, everyone already had everything we needed. Because we hunted and gathered and lived hand to mouth, it made no sense for any individual to do more work than was necessary or to possess more than they could personally use. Each of us would only typically need to be active for a few hours per day to meet all of our needs, just as today's remaining hunter-gatherer tribes still do now. That all began to change when the tribes started to enclose and own land in order to cultivate crops and raise animals. When we started farming, suddenly it became possible to take from your land more of something than you could personally use. Grain in particular might have been the first source of wealth because it could be stored for many months. The invention of wealth meant that those who had more than they needed now had an incentive to hoard and protect their assets. People would use their greater wealth to employ others to help keep them and their riches safe, and even to create armies to steal others' wealth. As the stakes grew higher, the rich built bigger barns and forts and castles so they could maintain control over more land, leading to the establishment of hierarchical societies and empires. What also happened is that rich came to mistake the power that wealth gave them for virtue. Wealth now gave them status. It made them higher or better than others. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. Of course, once wealth became the source of your status in the world, you must ensure you pass that status on to your offspring. So it became necessary to gather ever-increasing amounts of resources far beyond what anyone could use in their lifetime, in the attempt to secure your family status through the generations. Fast forward to medieval Europe. Although much of the good land was owned by aristocrats who demanded rent, there was plenty of common land, and most peasants, which simply means country dwellers, were still free folk, able to move around and work where and when they chose. In fact, we know that in the Middle Ages, the typical laborer worked fewer than 30 hours per week, still less than we work today. When the Industrial Revolution started in Britain in the 18th century, the new mills and factories required a great deal of manual labor. But this presented a problem because most of the people still lived on the land and worked only when they needed to. The owners of capital needed a way to get people off the land and into the towns. So began a series of acts of enclosure, which essentially took the common land away from the people and handed it to the aristocracy, effectively forcing the peasants to move to the towns to seek work. Because it did not suit the industrialists to have a mobile workforce, they embarked on extensive building programs to create housing for the workers and also create new types of long-term loan, the mortgage, from the Latin word for death pledge, which tied their workforce to their town and workplace. In the space of a few generations, the majority of people went from living on the land with a high degree of autonomy to a situation where they were compelled to work far more, often up to 80 hours per week, in worse conditions, all for the ultimate benefit of an employer. Their freedom to live and work where and when they chose was gone. They were now practically owned by the bosses, little better than slaves. Fast forward again to the present day. The consolidation of wealth and power has gone so far that we now see massive global inequality. Furthermore, the concentration is now beyond the point that the owners can dominate the population by force alone. They have to use methods that scale, which allow maximum control to be extended by a few people, in other words, hierarchies. As we will see, the claims that bind us are now societal. Dependency, distraction, division, dis-ease, all are tools to keep us trapped. People will not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. Alan Moore, V for Vendetta. The system. The situation today is that most of the world and most everything in it is still practically owned by a very small number of people. Today, they do not own the capital and the work. They do not just own the capital in the workplace, they also own the media that tell us what to think, the politicians that make policy, and the law enforcement that ensures that policy is followed. They own their own health care. They own our health care, education, science, media, entertainment, and even religious structures. Each of these things is now used to control us, to keep us distracted, divided, dependent, and living in permanent disease. Well, let's say they own most of those things. In every area of life, you can also find glitches that the owners can never completely control. Through this book, we will point out some of those glitches and show how you can use them to hack the system so that you can step away and rediscover your true, innate health and incredible potential as a human being. We are not saying that the owners are necessarily evil. Perhaps they are just motivated to compete with each other to see who can amass and keep the most capital and the most power. Make no mistake, the owners evidently do not care if you live or die. They do not have an interest in your being healthy or happy. They are only interested in gaining ever more control for themselves. This is plain to see. for the simple fact that in the present system, the world's richest and most powerful get far richer and more powerful every year, while the poorest get ever more miserable. Once you start to see it and let go of the myth that the authorities are there to serve us, the true motivation is evident, whether you look from the way it impacts our daily lives right to the way stronger countries bully other countries into submission. I stood in front of a Shah of Iran, the President of Indonesia, Ecuador, Panama, members of the Royal House of Saudi Arabia, and I said something like, "In this hand I have millions of dollars for you and your friends if you play the game. In this hand I have a gun in case you decide not to." I was an economic hitman, and economic hitmen have created a new global economy, really a form of capitalism that I will call predatory capitalism. It isn't working. We all know this. From John Perkins, author, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The motivation is ultimately not relevant. All that really matters is how you choose to live. You may choose to dwell in the illusion, in the lifelong pursuit of comfort and relief, accepting life of a wage slavery and poor health, or you may make alternative choices. Choice is the key. Perhaps the owners would love to be able to control our lives absolutely through some totalitarian system, but that has been tried many times before, and it has never worked. Every communist or fascist totalitarianism system is eventually brought down because the people do not want to be overtly controlled. That is why we have the system we live in today. We are repeatedly told that we are free. We are told that we have choice. But if you stand back and look, how much choice do you really enjoy? In many places in the developed world, we no longer are permitted to do what we choose. Whether it's collecting rainwater, growing food in our front yard, owning a firearm, taking natural medicines, medicines, even drinking unpasteurized milk. That level of control goes counter to natural law. Over himself, over his own body and mind, the individual is sovereign. John Stuart Mill. We will show you life is set up in such a way that we do what the owners want us. We will show you life is set up in such a way that we do what the owners want us to do. However, we must retain some freedom to choose. Otherwise, we would all rebel. And that is where the choice is key. They cannot take away our ultimate freedom to choose. So we must be encouraged to act in that way, in the way they want. So we must be encouraged to act in the way that they want while laboring under the illusion we are exercising our freedom. Consider that modern life is really an elaborate game designed to keep from noticing what is really happening by making sure we're constantly busy, exhausted, divided, and distracted. We are taught that we must participate in this game, but we do not get to choose the rules. We are told that the game is winnable, but very few ever seem to win. And those who do seem to win, gaining immense riches and fame, often do not seem to be any happier. Yet, we still strive. Consider also that because we cannot completely remove our freedom to choose, you do not have to play the game. But what would happen if you step away? What would happen if you gave up the endless pursuit of comfort in a world that seems designed to keep you in stress? The good news is you are indeed free to make that choice. What's more, you're not alone. More and more individuals are starting to question their role in the game that ultimately delivers endless sickness and misery to the futile pursuit of comforting numbness. Instead, many of us are choosing to live healthy and rewarding lives as sovereign, self-sufficient humans walking on the face of the earth. The child is grown, the dream is gone, I have become comfortably numb. Pink Floyd, David Gilmour, Roger Waters. The revolution has started. The revolution is not loud or violent. It is primarily happens in your mind with a series of radical shifts in your perspective on the world. As you read the book, you will begin to see how a modern form of slavery has been inflicting on us through coercion, trickery, and oppression. You will also discover ways that can gradually disengage us from the mechanism and simply reclaim your individual sovereignty as a free human with each switch into thinking or action. You can become truly free, truly healthy, and far more powerful. This revolution does not depend on violent hatred, Those are some of the owner's tools of oppression. As each individual human rebels, they simply stand up tall and walk away from their chains. We do not need to stage any public protests. We do not need to topple any existing power structure by force. That's why this revolution cannot be stopped, because it has no hierarchy. There are no leaders, because every sovereign individual is a leader. That way, the slave owners cannot detect us or contain us or fight us using any conventional means. Your personal revolution will start with your own journey. The expression of each individual's revolution will be unique because each one begins with an internal change of perspective. If you're ready, we invite you to read on and join the revolution. Okay, there's that. And so next Wednesday, that'll be January 18th, 2023. We're at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. We're going to be interviewing John Gusty, one of the authors of this work. It's a 335-page book, and we'll be having some... they've given us some links so you can get a hold of the book inexpensively, which will be in the description for next week's episode. I invite you to join us. Please come and join the Liberty Mindset. Thank you.